François is doing the keynote, right?
That's right.
Okay, so welcome to WineConf, another WineConf, another keynote. It's always the same thing, you know the drill. For those of you who are new, well, it's interesting. For the others, Hugh has explained the rules of the Keynote drinking game last night. So every time I say deep engine, you have a drink. Every time I say lines of code, you have a drink. What else? Regressions? You have a drink?
Yes.
Okay. So that should make it more interesting. So you can start by having a drink. That's traditional lines of code. It's still growing, and if you're sitting in the front row, you can probably see a little dip over there. But we've actually been removing quite a bit of code this year. There was all the DLL registration stuff. It has been a lot of boilerplate code has been removed. Of course, all the sound drivers have been killed and murdered and fed to the dogs. But it doesn't really make a big difference on the graph. So it's not very exciting. So I did another version of the graph, so you can have another drink. I counted the translations, and now we see a big jump. That's when we switch to the PO files for translations. Of course, it's a bit cheating because PO files are mostly generated, but if we count all the lines, then we see a difference. So that's all for the lines of code. So now I know it's very surprising, but I'm going to talk about release 1.4. And what do we want in release 1.4? So the first thing, of course, is DMG. You can have a drink. So we've been working, well, Hugh has mostly been working on the deep engine when he's not drinking. I've been helping, and we've made good progress. It's not really quite done yet, but another week or two and should be done. The other thing, of course, we have in 1.4 is the audio redesign that Andrew has been working on and having great fun. And it's working pretty well. Very pleased with it. Of course, there are some problems and there are still a lot of pending bugs, but the code is in place and it's looking good. And we finally have someone who is on top of the problem and can hopefully fix the remaining issues. The other thing we have is X-Input 2 for mouse support in games. That's also mostly done. Still has a number of problems, partly because of bugs in X-Input 2 itself, partly needs some tweaking. There are a number of heuristics for when to capture the mouse, when to release the mouse, stuff like that. And it needs some tweaking, but the code is in place and it's mostly done. And finally, there is the support for right-to-left languages. Eric has been doing a lot of work on text rendering for all sorts of strange languages. And I've done a little work on the UI parts, mirroring the UI and drawing everything the wrong way, basically. And that's also mostly done. There are still some issues with text and some issues with the mirroring, but the code is mostly in place. So as you can see, we are really pretty close for the release. The critical path at this point is clearly the deep engine. We need to finish that, and then we are basically good for starting code freeze and doing the release. I don't know when that will be, but I'm hoping for the end of the year. That's maybe a little optimistic, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes with the daemon engine. If we can make it for the end of the year, that means basically 18 months since the last release, which I think is reasonable. I know some people disagree and think we should have a release every 6 months. And we can probably have a discussion about that later today. But I mean, something like the deep engine is clearly takes time. And if we want that in a release, then there's simply no way around taking the time to do it. And I have a mouse pointer again. I don't know why. So a few other things that we've been doing that will be in 1.4. I mostly grabbed a list of random interesting things. There are, of course, many more in 1.4. At some point, I would build a detailed release notes, but I haven't done that yet. So we've made a lot of progress on the built-in Explorer, on the Gecko engine. Jacek has done several updates. We have a 64-bit Gecko engine now. And the built-in Explorer is actually usable. It has a user interface now. So it's a nice improvement. We have support for 64-bit COM. It's almost finished. And it's supported in the IDL compiler as well as all in the marshalling code. So that was one of the major missing points in 1.2. We had 64-bit support, but basically very little COM support. We have the Vista file dialogues. That was a Summer of Code project. We have OLE drag and drop. I don't think I've ever used it, but some people use it. And GStreamer for video streaming and codec support. And we also have a Mac version using QuickTime. We have VBScript, which wasn't really planned and wasn't even on the radar 2 months ago, and Jacek just went off and finished it, basically. So it's pretty amazing. And we have multi-sampling, D3D, so you can have fuzzy rendering instead of clear rendering. Some people like that, apparently. So that's what came to my mind. I'm sure there are many others that I'm missing. There are a few things that would be nice to have, but that we may not be able to finish, or that I'm hoping to have to encourage people to finish for 1.4. 64-bit make tests would be really nice. It should be, in theory, it should be blocking for 1.4. I mean, we should really be able to do a make test on 64-bit. But at this point, the remaining problem is the type-lib marshalling. It's not implemented for 64-bit. And I did some work on that, but the right way to do it is to change type-lib marshaller to use RPCRT functions and stuff like that. So it's going to require changing the 32-bit side also. And I'm not sure that's something we want to do at this point. The marshaller is a pretty critical piece of code, and I'm not sure I want to change it just before the release. So this may have to wait until after 1.4. The DOSBox integration, we've made progress. Andre has been working on that, and he even managed to get patches into DOSBox. They've been accepted so that we can do better integration of the file system and things like that. And the problem is that it's going to take a DOSBox release to get this out to the users. So I don't know when they will release, but apparently they don't release all that often either. So we may release before them. So it may not be available in 1.4. But it's working okay. At this point, DOSBox is still a fallback, so we don't use it unless we have no other choice. So if you have VM86 support, we use that, and then we fall back to DOSBox. And the plan would be to do the opposite and use DOSBox always by default. But that probably needs to wait at least until they release a version that has the patches we need. The translations with PO files, it's basically half done. So it's supported for menus and for strings, but we don't yet support dialogues. And it would be nice to be able to do dialogues and have everything in PO files for 1.4. Probably we'll have a session to discuss remaining issues. The UDisk support, and that's for dynamic devices, and replace HAL, which has been removed for some reason. Probably because fixing bugs is not as exciting as doing new stuff. So we clearly need that. There is a patch that implemented that. I'm not quite happy with the patch, but it shows that it's not really hard. So I don't think it will be a problem to finish that for 1.4. And finally, one thing that I would love to have someone work on is a crash dialog. Right now we have a really nice crash dialog, so that it used to be that when an app crashed, it would just go away. And now you have a nice dialog that tells you that the app is going to go away. But then people report the bug, and what we have to tell them is to restart the app from a terminal and capture the output so that we can get the backtrace. And that's really not very nice. And it would be actually fairly easy to capture the backtrace inside a dialog and be able to save to a file or send it to Bugzilla or whatever. So if someone is looking for a nice, not too hard task to do before 1.4, that would be really nice to have. Of course, there won't be any bugs in 1.4, so we don't really need a crash dialog, but just in case. Now, there are a couple of things that won't quite make it in 1.4. We have to leave a few things to do for the next release cycle. USB support, that was on the list of things that we might have had, but it's clearly not ready at this point, and it's not even clear. We don't even have a prototype implementation, so it's not even clear what the design is going to be. So clearly it's not going to be done for 1.4, except maybe if Jacek starts working on it and has 200 patches by next week, and then he's done. The Quartz driver, Ken has been working on that for a few months, but one of the issues is that it's depending on the deep engine. So he kind of needs the deep engine to be finished before he can finish the Quartz driver. And since I'm busy changing the interface all the time, so he has to redo his work all the time. So I'm not going to wait for the Quartz driver before releasing 1.4. And Direct3D, that Direct3D 10, that has been on the list for a while, and Henri has just been busy with other stuff, so it hasn't really made any progress. It's not clear that it's that important at this point, so you just have to wait. that's for the main points. I'm sure there are many other things that won't make it, but so I want to talk a little about quality assurance. There's been some debates lately about that, and the different tools that we have to ensure the quality or lack of quality of our code. So first thing is the test bot. So there's actually a sad note about that Greg, who authored the test bot, passed away a few months ago. So he's obviously no longer going to maintain that, and we need to find a solution for the test bot because it's really useful for wine development, and we really need to keep that going. So Greg arranged for his brother to maintain the hardware and keep the test bot running, but that's clearly not a long-term solution. So we need to take over the test bot. The plan is that we would move the web front end on the WineHQ server, because right now it's a separate web server. And the VM backends for the test bot would be hosted at CodeWeavers. So we'd buy some hardware and put the VMs on that.
So Mark and I were doing this, and we can, if we borrow the right VMware software, we can do this all live without further fuss. We just need to set up and install this. And you won't ever notice that we actually moved it.
That's the plan. Yeah, we certainly don't want to disrupt the test box for weeks or months, because right now the results are really good, and the main reason for that is that the test bot is testing all the patches, and patches don't go in if they break something. So clearly, if the test bot is down for months, then we are going to get patches committed that will break stuff, and then it's always harder to come back and fix the stuff once it's in. So yeah, we clearly need to make sure that it keeps being available. But at this point, the results are really looking good, and actually I'm going to show some of them if I can. Yeah. Yes. So as you can see on the Windows side, it's basically all yellow, and there's even some green. So that's really good. I mean, I don't think it has ever looked that good, and that's mostly thanks to the test bot, because we are now able to make sure that we don't regress. One of the things we could do for the test session is to fix some of the remaining failures. For instance, if you look at Vista 2008, we have one failure in most cases, and that's on a testbot VM, so it should be fairly easy to fix. We can upload test programs and address that. And some other failures are on VMs that Francois is maintaining, so that may be harder to fix because we don't have access to the VMs. So mostly we just need Francois to fix them, which he's been doing, but it's a lot of work. Still, it's looking very good, and we want to make sure that we keep it that way. On the wine side, there's a bit more red. So there is actually some successful ones on Linux. And that's something we need to address. And that's what Dan has been working on recently with the build bot, trying to address the fact that we need to test all the patches also on the wine side, which we don't currently. So since Dan is not... Well, every time a patch is submitted, it should be run through all the tests. And right now it's done on my box, because I do the test before committing.
Right.
But there's a wide range of boxes where we get failures, and we should be able to test every batch on all these machines to ensure that we don't introduce failures. And that's a bit difficult because currently there are many transient failures and race conditions and stuff like that. So when I do the make test, it's very easy for me to see. I know that there are some tests that fail from time to time, and I just do a make test again, and then it passes. When it's automated, then of course you need the tool to be able to know what is a real failure and what is transient failure, and Dan has been struggling with that. So, but he's not here, so we probably won't be able to discuss BuildBot much further.
Can we feed your expertise back in marking some of the tests that may fail transiently?
Wow.
That was good, James.
We could, I mean,
Yeah, just a stupid sales guy, huh?
Sales and HVAC.
Yeah, sales and HVAC.
conceptually what I do is really that I recognize the failures, and that's something a tool could do too. You could teach the tool that such and such test is usually failing, or you could have the tool run the test 5 times, and if it fails only once, then decide that it's a race condition.
So
Things like that.
Isn't the ultimate goal to have the test never fail? I mean, isn't that a better goal?
Yes, but yeah.
You have to be realistic as well.
Yeah, you don't want some flaky test failing unrelated to your code, preventing your code from getting commit.
Well, the thing is you don't want to have new failures where you're working on fixing the existing.
Right.
Yeah, of course the goal is that it never fails, but I mean even on the Windows side it's still failing, and we have had the test bot for a while, so clearly you cannot start by deciding that everything passes. You have to take into account that it's the end goal, but you have to live with the fact that some tests fail. So that was for the test results and BuildBot. One thing we need to do for 1.4 is to build a list of bugs. Right now, if you go to Bugzilla, there's a 1.4 task list, which is empty.
Ship it.
That's one way of doing it. The other way is to go through the bugs and put in the 1.4 milestone the bugs we want to fix. And what we've done in the previous releases was that basically people would nominate every bug that they found important, which was usually important to them, but not necessarily important to the wide community. And so I was hoping that for 1.4 we could try to restrict the list to bugs that are related to the features that we have in 1.4. So if it's a deep engine bug, or if it's a sound bug, or if it's a mouse bug, then it should go into 1.4. And if it's not, then we would love to fix it anyway, but it probably shouldn't be in the 1.4 milestone.
What features for 1.2 are still waiting?
Well, these are hopeless at this point. So no, we still have a number of bugs in the 1.2 milestone that haven't been fixed. And if they haven't been fixed for 1.2 and haven't been fixed in the 18 months since, then they probably won't be fixed for 1.4. So I don't think it makes sense to put them back into the milestone. Unless, of course, they are related. There are actually a few in the 1.2 milestone that will get fixed by the deep engine and by the sound work. And finally, regressions. Yeah, have a drink. So there have been some complaints about regressions, some flame wars, and we can have another flame war later on, but I want to show some results first. So I did a graph of the regressions from the Bugzilla data, and the red bars are how many regressions have been reported, green bars are how many have been fixed month by month, and the orange is the difference. So one thing you see is the 1.2 release, where we had a lot of new regressions being reported, and we also fixed a lot of them. So we actually made some serious progress in during 1.2 in the number of regressions. And the lines show the average. So you can see that we have about 45 new regressions every month, and we fix about 41. That's 90% of the regressions are being fixed. I think that's a pretty good result. On the total bugs we have, we fix about 60% of all the bugs. So clearly, regressions are getting more attention than normal bugs. Of course, the goal would be that the green line should be above the red line, that we fix more regressions than we get, but hopefully we'll get there.
How did you separate the regression from regular model reports?
There's a keyword in Bugzilla, yeah. And we have now added in Bugzilla the commit ID field in a database, so we can do queries about regression and stuff like that. Which leads us to a fancy tool that Henri has developed and that I'm going to show you, that I think is going to help with the tracking regressions. Here you go. So it shows regressions and the guilty person. So I'm at the top of the list. Very proud of that. And so if you pick a name like Martin, for instance, because he's not here, then you can see the list of all the bugs that have been tracked down to a commit caused by Martin. So I want to make it clear that your goal is not to beat me to the top of the list, right? Your goal is to not be on the list at all. Being on the list is bad. And being at the top of the list is really bad. In fact, I should probably stop accepting badges from that guy, because he really sucks. And so, as you can see, we have quite a number of names. And then we also have a list of regressions that have not been tracked down to a commit. So that would be a task for people who want to help with the bug tracking, is to dissect all these bugs. 144 bugs. And
probably the half of them you can just close it or not regression.
yes. Well, some of them have downloads, so potentially anybody could download and do the bisect. Others, we need the reporter to do the bisect, and clearly that's sometimes difficult and for non-technical people to do the bisect. And
if by sheer coincidence you own the application.
Yeah.
Before that.
Well,
but yeah, there are some very old bugs, and if they haven't been bisected by now, then probably they should just be closed, because they're not going to get fixed.
Yeah, some of them must say that I can't really be bisected, like the bugs related to the new mouse code. It wasn't just one patch. It's
Yes.
so it's, yeah, okay, I'll identify the patch that switches from old to new, which will add one more to the list. But
Yes, clearly, and I mean it's not really it's not sorted by commits, but if you look at the list, clearly there are some commits that cause several regressions. So that's also one way of knowing that. And actually, you should be able to see. Okay. Shows you the description. So that was one of the interesting recent changes. So that's Henri's tool, and I'm hoping that this will all make you feel guilty and encourage you to fix your regressions.
Actually, what's the URL of that page?
source.1hu.org/regressions.
Okay.
It's not quite integrated yet. It's not refreshed. I need to set up a cron job to refresh it, stuff like that. You had a question? Okay. Yeah.
Pointing to the link.
Okay, so that's all I had for regressions. And now we just all go to work and fix those regressions. By tonight, the list should be empty.
Yeah.
And actually, you don't have to fix only your regressions. I mean, if someone wants to tackle some of the 68 on the mining, then you can go ahead. Okay, that's all I had. Do you have questions, comments? Yeah.
With lines of code, did you ever split it up by test lines of code versus code lines of code? I think that would be interesting.
I could, yeah, for next time.
Did you have
Can have one more chart and one more drink. I know.
Yes.
Did you have a graph with the number of commits?
Yeah, I didn't show this one this time.
Why not?
No, I looked at the number and it's mostly constant. So the average number of commits is staying mostly stable. I don't remember, it's about 800 a month, I think.
What about the number of
That's
new?
it. No, it's more than that.
What about the number of new committers or authors? I don't still have 2 new people.
I haven't checked the numbers recently. That would be interesting to do, yeah. I'm not sure if we still have that many. I mean, we don't see many new faces here. But sorry?
I had the feeling it slowed down.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be important to know, I guess. Content for sure. Or if we're more boring than used to.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. And
But there will come this summer, like 2 new people that are going to tackle some other bugs like Bruno Jesus, Bernhard Loos or something like that.
yeah, we still have new people, clearly. Yeah,
Yeah, and actually, I think all of our summer of code students were pretty successful this year too. So we had a good crop.
yeah.
of
yeah.
new students.
We've gotten better at selecting the good projects for Summer of Code. And they mostly all succeed now. So, yeah, that's good. The questions?
Did you have anything to say about the test? I mean, like the coverage of it? How does it feel subjectively? Like, growing it with the code, or faster, or slower?
I think it's growing, I would say, faster, and I mean, I'm very pleased with the test suite. I think it's catching a lot of problems, but clearly the coverage is tiny compared to the size of the code base. We could clearly have 10 times or 100 times more tests, and we would still not cover everything. But the test suite is really helpful, and I'm catching a lot of problems, and I hope others are also catching problems before they even submit the patches. So yeah, it's
Yes, this sound was pretty decent to catch some bugs. It's like like hard to read the tests in there, but you'll have it fail.
Yeah. No, we have a number of tests that are really strict, and one of the nice things we have now with the deep engine is that we control the contents of the graphics, so everything is pixel perfect, and we can actually test all the graphics primitives. So we've been adding tests for that, and that's going to be really helpful, because with X there's no way we could test the graphics results.
How about those to-do tests as beta? Why to do?
We have a number of to-do tests. Would be nice at some point to have people go to the list and fix the to-dos.
It seems to me if it's a test has 10%, 20% to do, so it's and there's no failing, you're not really shown them anywhere.
Yeah, they are shown in the list. Yeah.
It's an orange bar or the blue bar.
Oh, that's the orange bar.
Yeah.
Those are the
Basically, all of these tests are to-dos, and they are
You mean all the numbers, right? The orange.
all the orange ones. Yes.
Orange.
Because, I mean, if it's green, it's because there have been some skips. Because if there are no skips, then it doesn't even show in the list. So basically, the list of tests you see here is the test where there's something that needs to be done. And we do show all the to-dos. If you have the complete list, so it's really, it's very easy for someone to find something to do. But now, I mean, most of them don't really matter, because if they matter for an application, then we would have fixed it.
How about just code cases?
Yeah, or stuff just you just write tests for an API, so you try all sorts of different things, and you mark them as to do until you find an application that actually needs them. So I'm not sure that going through the list one by one is really a good way of spending the effort. Okay. Thank you.
Since the question has been raised about the number of code contributors, Olo.net has some crazy statistics, and essentially the number of committers has been more or less stable since the last 6 years. Contributors, yeah. They call it committers here, but it's contributors. We have only one committer.
Do you mean?
So we had about between, it varies a lot between month from month to month. But we had about, according to Olo.net, we had about 50 to 75 contributors each month.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Well, except for September, where we had 0, apparently. Looks like a bug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alexander.
Thank you all.